Art of the Brew basically, I think, originated from noticing a similarity between brewing beer and making art. There was something in the process of doing both that really connected to me. I think working towards this ideal end goal, but kind of not ever knowing exactly what was going to happen throughout different steps of the process, just kind of reminded me of experimentation, of starting with this goal in mind, or this end goal in mind, but kind of being able to be loose and let it be whatever it's going to be in the end. There's this thing that several of the different people that taught me how to brew in the beginning would say, when you get really stressed out and you're home brewing, it'd be like, relax and have a beer. It's gonna be okay, and I think to some degree, for me, that's kind of my approach to making art, is that it's gonna work out in the end, and you kind of just have to trust the process and trust where you're going. And that's really simple, but I think that in some ways they're both really simple desires. They just, show themselves in very complicated ways sometimes.
We kind of took what we had already, or what we knew about the breweries and kind of the general culture of the breweries through our initial kind of introductions and pitches to the breweries. And we tried to match them with artists who we thought their personalities would kind of get along, when we went out on the brewery tours. And I think, secondarily, but equally as important, we wanted to try to pick artists whose styles would reflect that culture as well. That said, every time we went to the brewery, it was sometimes things would pan out just the way we thought they would, and they would click the way we thought they would. And other times, there would be a similarity between the breweries that we didn't really see coming. Like with 512, for example, the first year we paired them up with Dave Culpepper, and they instantly hit it off because they both have this passionate love for metal music and lowbrow humor, and that's ended up determining what the work was that Dave created, and that wasn't necessarily why we paired them up to begin with. So there's always kind of these surprises when you go on the brewery tours, and they come out of these conversations between the brewers and the artists that sometimes were expected, and other times were just kind of really nice coincidences.
I think to expand on the similarity of brewers and artists and where they connect is that, the opening is always really fun, the being at the bar is really fun, the drinking is really fun, but the idea that you've kind of, given up this idea of living this sort of easier route of a life to do what you want and make what you want, when actually the process can be really not fun or not at all glamorous, or just like dirty, smelly, things don't work out, things don't dry, things don't, all of these things, that it's a very similar process and a similar type of person who's willing to yeah, sure, I'll take this job where I get to, 10% of the time come up with fun stuff and try new things, and the rest of the time I'm like at Home Depot or, fixing what I fucked up, and so I think those similarities and pairing these people together, they kind of get to see each other's process in that way, that there's a lot of the process is not as fun as what you get in the end.
Yeah, if anybody thinks, I would like to make beer because I like to drink beer, or I'd like to make art because I like to look at interesting things, that's really missing out on so much of it, so much of the actual doing, the difficulty of
and people
making.
who can enjoy that process and get off on that process, that's not the part that the rest of the world can see and relate to or think of as enjoyable.
That was one of the biggest things that I learned out of going to all these brewery tours. with these artists, where it's funny how many similarities there are between just the type of person that becomes a brewer, becomes an artist. There's a lot of people that didn't start out as brewers and artists. They were graphic designers, or they were in the finance industry, or they had these other jobs that they had basically had this moment in their life where they I don't want to do this anymore. It's not what's making me happy. It's not what I enjoy doing. And so they became a brewer, or they became an artist. And there was this overwhelming amount of overlap, I feel like, with both the artists we chose and just the breweries that we worked with, that these people are coming from all kinds of backgrounds and interests. But at the end of the day, they're all really doing what they love doing, creating these things, despite the enormous amount of risk it takes to be both a brewer or an artist. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of unifying thing that came up in a lot of conversations. These are both things that are driven a lot by passion and not necessarily by, money or the gains you can make.
I think everybody's a little surprised by all the other, whatever you came for. I think it may be surprising that all the rest of it is solid.
Yeah, and so many people were just like, what is this place? I want to come back and check it out, because they realized that this was sort of a one-off thing, but they were impressed by everything that was going on and had a lot of chance to talk to people that are involved with us and the artists who were able to kind of give them an idea of what we're all about. And, I think all of our events are pretty diverse crowd, but being able to have, from tailgaters to patrons of the art to beer dudes and, just have this whole range of people is just, makes for a really fun event.
Well, I think it's kind of funny and kind of awesome too that the write-up in the Chronicle was actually in the food and dining section, which I think is the first time collab's ever been listed in that section of the Chronicle.
Totally.
But it kind of speaks to you get a lot of beer nerds, you get art nerds, and you get these very focused communities that don't usually mingle like that, and they all come together and kind of really appreciate each other's craft and what everybody does.
I just think generally it shows the general community that our events particularly are really a good time, and that it's not this thing where you're kind of slinking in, checking out the art, and then heading out because it's not a real social or welcoming or a place you'd want to stick around, but people are able to come in and get a full picture of, this is a social thing, this is a community thing, this isn't just about coming out and looking at something and seeing and being seen,
Yeah, I think what you hope that you achieve on all levels is that everything that's experienced at the event is totally legit. That the art's legitimate, that the music's legitimate, that the beer's legitimate, and that the community that ends up showing up there and the interaction is legitimate as well, and it's not just something that people make you feel good for showing up to because you paid some money, but that these groups of people are actually interested in interacting with one another and interested in consuming culture on these different levels. I think that so often people stay away from things like art or independent music or even craft beer because they feel like it's over their heads or stuffy, or somebody's gonna talk shit to you because you don't know all the right words to say, or you're new, and nobody wants to feel like they don't know what's going on. And I think an event like that is really easy for everybody to feel like, oh, we're kind of all on the same level here, really. It's an even playing field, and I don't have to feel nervous to talk to anybody because we're all just having a great time and drunk.